Ultralight backpacking is extremely expensive, or at least that's what I'm led to believe. I see comments everywhere saying so. The thousands of dollars you or I would have to spend to have a small, lightweight backpack, or the thousands of dollars I have spent to have a small ultralight backpack. I personally think this is one of backpacking's biggest misconceptions, that to buy the best, you need to spend big money. Today we will be going over exactly what I spent on my gear and comparing it to some of the most common kits out there. Now for this, I've done research on pass-through hikers, on hopefuls for this year, section hikers, and just in general, what I've seen time and time again on every single trail that I've ever been on. I think in the end you will be extremely surprised at what my kit has cost, what the average person has spent, and why there is such a big difference. So first we will look at my backpack. I use a Palante V2. It's from a small company out of Utah, and we will be comparing it to an Osprey Atmos 65. Osprey is an incredibly popular company, and you will see their packs used by everyone, everywhere. Now, my pack costs $215, while the Atmos goes for $270. So already a noticeable difference there. In this case, the price comes from all the extra features Osprey or any big box company adds to their gear. Problem is, a lot of those features are just a marketing ploy, so they can say their backpack has this or that, while in reality you wind up having to pay for and then carry something that's heavier and costs more with a bunch of features you don't actually need. While most ultralight companies will make a product for you that's a lot more streamlined. My pack, for instance, has everything I could ever want and nothing more. It is perfectly streamlined for me, without any extra fluff or features jacking both the price and the weight up. Something else worth mentioning is all of the hikers I looked at that were carrying something like the Osprey also had pack covers, which generally cost about $30 more to keep their gear dry. While my pack from the get-go, right out of the box, uses waterproof materials that will keep all the contents dry without needing any aftermarket add-ons, which again are just going to add to the cost and the weight. So next up is my shelter. I use a flat tarp, and we will be comparing it to a Big Agnes Copper Spur and a Big Agnes Fly Creek. Tents are far and wide the most popular choice on any long distance trail, and Big Agnes is the most popular brand among them all. Now my tarp cost me $235 compared to these two tents costing $380 and $330 respectively. So not only are these tents 8 times the weight of my tarp, they are also considerably more expensive. For a long time I used a tarp that only cost me $90, and even then it was still an entire pound lighter than both of these tents. It kept me just as dry and safe from the elements as either of those shelters, while providing even more space underneath it than both of those shelters would. Now, I understand tarps aren't everyone's cup of tea, but let's compare those two tents to another small cottage company, Six Moon Designs, and their Lunar Solo tent. Lunar Solo goes for $200 and is again much lighter, much cheaper, without really sacrificing much at all. So moving on, next up is my sleeping bag. My sleeping bag isn't much of a sleeping bag at all, really. It's a quilt. I use the Mountain Laurel Designs FKT quilt, and it cost me $230. Now this is an area that's a lot harder to make comparisons to, because I don't feel like anyone should be trying to save money or skimp on their quilt or their sleeping bag. While just about everything else you could ever carry could probably be avoided or found cheaper, found lighter, I don't think this is specifically an area where that should hold true as well. Though going for a quilt instead of a sleeping bag is, for the most part, a better option. So although you may not want to save money here, a lot of the hikers I see are using air mattresses that cost upwards of $130, while most ultralight hikers will opt for a $20 foam pad. Maybe not as small or as skinny as this one, but the same holds true, thus creating a big divide in cost again, but now in the sleeping category. Take this one step further, a lot of hikers will also buy into buying an inflatable pillow, running them another $35 deeper. And even further again, I see a lot of hikers in practice out on the trail and online looking at gear lists that will also carry a sleeping bag liner. These sleeping bag liners can cost upwards of $65 or even more to add extra warmth to your sleeping bag or to possibly protect it a little bit further. So while initially we have a very small price point and we are probably carrying a very similar bag, in the end, when you add on all of these extra things, it brings the overall cost difference to $200 more. This brings up an excellent point. With nearly every hiker I looked at in research, pass-through hikers, section hikers, and future-through hikers, counting up every item on their gear list, I noticed that most of them had upwards of 60 or more total things that they were bringing with them. This compared to me only having 27 total pieces that I used on the Pacific Crest Trail, Appalachian Trail, and many other trails in between. So that's 30 more items that they had to buy, and now they choose to carry. Are these extra things making their time on trail any better? That I can't answer, but I do think certain gear can act as a crutch instead of learning oftentimes easy ways to make up for what you don't have with you. Possibly using what you do have with you in ways that you never had thought of before. Now, there are a lot of items in my pack that are cheap yet functional. My rain jacket costs $15 when I see a lot of people spending $70 to over $100. I use recycled water bottles or sport drink bottles instead of $10 Nalgene's. And my flashlight costs $10 instead of a $40 headlamp. So here's what you've all been waiting for. How much did I spend on my entire kit? My full loadout, my 6 pounds worth of gear that I've used on thousands of miles of many different trails, that commenters here have even told me how much money I must have spent on it. And the total cost would be $1,140. Now that's compared to some of the most average Appalachian Trail gear lists I could find, which are coming in around $2,200 to even higher than that. So more than $1,000 difference. That's quite a bit of money. Now, could both of these lists be cheaper? Sure, of course they could. But since the Ultralight backpacker is spending less on a lot of this stuff, is having to buy less because they're not carrying as much stuff, in the end, they will always come out having spent less money than a traditional backpacker. Spending less money on gear, allowing them to spend more time on trail. Now, if you want to see exactly what I carry, I will try and leave a list down below. Not everything works for everybody, but I promise there is something out there that will work just for you.